Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Marie Cosgrove. Marie is an award-winning international speaker, author, business consultant, entrepreneur, and certified coach. As a single mom of four who bought the company that fired her, Marie brings unique perspectives gained from her experiences to your organization, empowering you to unleash the untapped potential of your employees. Marie's unique perspective has proven that a positive mental attitude, regardless of your past or current situation, always results in success. This perspective has inspired her to teach, develop, inspire, and mentor thousands of students, business leaders, mothers, fathers, and employees on an international scale. Marie is dedicated to empowering everyone to achieve greater success. Marie is also a best-selling author of the book Greater Fortune: Essential Lessons from the Entrepreneur Who Bought the Company That Fired Her. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Marie. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
I'm honored to be here with you, Dwight. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Yes, I'm excited about this. From the first moment I met you, which was at Tony's 365 Advance event in Mexico, I've clicked with you. I think you are an amazing individual that has, the tenacious personality that I am and that I hope to have in my life. So it's been fantastic getting to know you there. Been looking forward to this podcast recording since that, because that was back in, oh my goodness, May already. It's already been a couple months. Time flies. So one of the things I focus on, and I'm really looking forward to this because I know some of your origin from listening to you speak and telling your story, but I focus on a person's origin story from their earliest recollections to, little Marie to where you are today, because, bottom line, people are so superficial, right? They don't really understand that vulnerability allows those around them, those that want to be attracted to what they offer, they have to know, like, and trust you. So if you could do me a favor and share your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
So I was brought into this world through adversity, and I believe that resilience is a key to overcoming adversity in this world. And I do believe that the world's filled with adversity. I was talking to someone earlier in the week, and they said, well, I really don't believe in resiliency, because if you just think positive, you're not going to have any adversity. I'm like, well, point someone in this world who's never had one bit of adversity. I mean, look all around you. You can think positive thoughts in bring positivity in your life and surround yourself with positive people. Like I surround myself with positive people like you. Hanging out with you and at 365 Driven, it's awesome. But you're in the workplace, or you have a client, or you're interacting with the world, you're going to come across toxic people. You're going to come across, if you and I are in a cafe and we're having coffee and both you and I are positive people, right? We think positive thoughts, and someone comes in with a gun and they start shooting. That's not something we brought upon ourselves. That person has free will. That person chose to act in a very horrific way, and it impacted us. So I do believe that there are keys. And the reason I believe that is because I did come into this world through adversity, and I will share that with you. So ever since my earliest recollection, I remember hearing this story about my mother, who was in a car accident, and she was in a coma for many months. The doctor said that there was absolutely no sign of recovery, and if she were to recover, she'd be a vegetable the rest of her life. And so she went through a number of surgeries, and she still was in a coma. They were going to pull the plug, and the night before they pulled the plug, my grandmother was on her knees praying and asking for a miracle. The family members came ready for the funeral. In fact, I found the newspaper clipping of this, and in the newspaper clipping, they talked about how the priest was ready to give the last rites, and the police. This accident happened in Mexico, and at that time, my grandfather was driving, and it caused a car accident because he had been driving down a very dangerous curve. To this day, it's known as the Devil's Spine, and so my grandfather, they were ready to arrest him for involuntary manslaughter. So anyway, the next day, when they're gonna pull the plug, she opened her eyes and she had to learn, talk, walk, and do everything over again, but she still had permanent brain damage. So what that meant was that she had to be on pharmacological treatment her entire life, and she was never normal. She had mental illness. Some of these drugs caused schizophrenia. So she was, sometimes normal, sometimes what, and you never knew. It could be from one moment to the next. But during her recovery, she was raped. And the doctor said that they had to abort the child because bringing in a child into this world, into a world of poverty, a family of poverty, no father, and a result of rape, which is a very shameful thing, especially, in my culture, you don't even talk about these things. Like me sharing what I'm sharing with you is something that should never be shared in my culture. And the reason I share it is because I feel passionate about being resilient, being able to overcome, and to share that, yes, it does, even if you've gone through what I've gone through or worse situations, because people have gone through much worse, you can overcome. So anyway, my mother said, God saved my life, and I'm not going to take the life going inside of me. And my grandmother said, well, I will help you raise your child. And at that time, the doctors told my grandmother, you just need to abort it, because this child is definitively going to come out with all types of abnormalities, physical and mental. There's no way, with all the medications that she is on, that this child's going to be born normal. And my grandmother said, it doesn't matter how this child's born, I'm going to support my daughter. And because she made that decision, I'm here today. And that, I understand, that is a hard decision. I'm not judging anyone who's been in that type of situation. Don't abort. Or I personally am pro-life, because you don't know. Today I work with, we manufacture devices that help patients with traumatic brain injury, concussions. We've helped over 1.5 million patients to date. So you don't know what potential that life has. And my grandmother took that risk, and I'm truly grateful and thankful that she did. And has my life been easy? No. Every reason that is given today for abortion, I had that reason. Poverty, product of rape, born to a mentally disabled single mom, someone who couldn't take care of me. Now, all of those reasons, where even the most staunch conservative pro-lifer would say, yeah, I think that's a good enough reason to abort. So I share this because I want to share that miracles do happen. They are real. No, life is not easy. Yes, life is full of adversity, but you can overcome, and you can turn that adversity into advantage.
Of course you can. Um, that's the problem with our society today. and I'm not saying people that use abortion are looking for an easy way out. I don't want to speak for, their mental state, but I'm glad that obviously getting to know you in Mexico and talking to you now, I'm glad your grandma said, forget that, right? It doesn't matter
Mhm.
what state this person comes in. It's no different than people that find out prior. I can't remember the name of the test where they test the fluid to find out whether or not you're going to have a kid that's mentally handicapped. And in the past, there was no options. Now there is options, and people
Mhm.
turn to abortion because it is a long road to raise somebody that is mentally handicapped or is going to be born with some rare, health condition. Um, at the end of the day, there's people that are pro-life, there's people that are pro-choice, there's people that are both. They believe in pro-life, but they also believe people have the choice to make their own decision in life. And it's caused so much diversity. We could even take this into what we've just been going through with the pandemic, pro vaccine, right? Or not, or
Mhm.
masks or not, right? But there's so much division because of it. I look in the US right now with all the diversity and all the friends that I have on both sides of the camp, right and left, in regards to Roe versus Wade. And at the end of the day, people, make your choice. Hopefully it's a sound choice, because like you said, look where you are in life. You wouldn't be here today. You wouldn't have created that medical device that has helped 1.5 million people. He talked to us a little bit about it in Mexico, and some of the things that you're coming up with and continuing to develop would never have happened if your grandma had listened to doctors. And people listening realized those doctors were giving their what they believed to be a right answer. But always second guess people, always get a second opinion. Don't trust the fact that the medical community knows everything, because I've got story after story where I know for a fact they don't have their act together. I'm not saying the medical community is not good, but always trust your gut. For me, I pray to God because I'm a God fearing person. I've been born and raised. I was a Christian, Catholic Christian, and I pray. If you're not a person that prays for answers, find somebody like, and trust, that that's going to play both sides of the coin for you and make you think before you make a rash decision. And I'm so glad your grandma didn't make a rash decision, and that you're here today with us. I so appreciate your story. Um, Obviously, there's more details. We heard a little bit more in Mexico, in regards to the details. And, you've been through a lot. Can you share with the listeners some of the journeys you've gone through too with relationships? You've had some tumultuous relationships which have affected your life too, but yet on the other side of that adversity, you keep on climbing out of life. Would you care to share any of that?
Sure. Because I didn't always see the miracle in the choices that my grandma made and me being a part of this world. I saw myself as an accident. I saw myself as I shouldn't be in this world. And I didn't see that I was a person of value. And because of that, I made poor choices. Now, if you asked me that when I had made those poor choices, I would have said had nothing to do with it. I'm married into a domestic violence situation. And a lot of people say, how can that be your fault? And I'm not saying it's my fault. I didn't ask to be beat. I didn't ask to get in that situation. I didn't expect it. What I say about it being my fault was my mindset, because I stayed in it and I allowed the beatings to continue, and I would leave and then I'd get back together. And when I would be abused both physically and emotionally, I believed those lies, that were told to me. You're worthless, you're just a bastard child, nobody would have married you, who would want you, and all of these lies. I believe them about myself. So that's where I say that part of it, where I take responsibility, because my mindset, that's where my mindset was at that time. And fortunately, I was able to get out of that situation with the help of a doctor. I was pregnant at the time, and one of the doctors noticed severe bruising. And interesting, I was mentioning to you, Dwight, how I had a fracture because I was boogie boarding. Well, the doctor noticed that I had a lot of old fractures from before. And he goes, "You had previous trauma, didn't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it reminded me that's where I had all the bruising when I was pregnant. And the doctor said, those, I would lie to her and say, "Yeah, I fell or I bumped myself." She's like, "Yeah, you don't get bruised like that." And so she filed a police report, got me into a shelter, and I got out of that situation. And so if it hadn't been for that, who knows how long it would have taken me to get out. But there was someone there that noticed, that saw something, and helped me to get out of that situation. And I really appreciate that. And then I didn't have the confidence in myself. So I was involved in church. In work, I did very, very well. I was working for a bank at the time. I was a vice president of marketing for a bank, and we grew it to a substantial size that we ended up selling to a bigger bank and merging. And at that time, I was being involved in the church. Some family members suggested someone in the church, and they became really good friends with this person who was also in the financial industry. And I didn't feel comfortable. My intuition told me no, but I didn't trust myself. And so when they said, "This is a Christian man, this is a good person, and you can't raise these," I had three children, "You can't raise these kids alone. You need someone." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're probably right." And I remember the day before, like the day before the wedding, I'll never forget, because it was raining, and I had a phone call. And my family member said, I told my family member, "I don't want to do this. I'm not going to get married." "You selfish person. How could you do this? This person is going to provide everything for you. And God sends you someone, and you're saying no to God's gift to you." And I felt really guilty. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, God's giving me this gift." And so I ended up going through with this marriage, and I had one child with him, and it was the biggest mistake. He, well, I'm blessed with the one child I had, but he beat my boys in unimaginable ways. I came home from a business trip early, and I saw that he didn't expect me home, and my boys were on their knees, and he had a belt buckle. And I said, "What's going on?" And the kid says, "He hit us." And he said, "No, they're making it up. I would never touch them." And I turned, and I saw that there was blood coming out the side of one of my son's shorts. And and that son now is just turned 27. And so I grabbed the kids and I just left. And the church kept saying, "You need to go back. You need to go back." And I said, "No one's ever going to touch my kids again." And so at that point, I decided, okay, what is wrong with me? And I started working on myself and just focusing on my kids and raising them until they were adults. So relationship wise, I've not always made the smartest decisions, but now I recognize the why. And I feel it necessary for me to share the why, because I know that there are so many women from, we think of domestic violence and we think, "Oh, these are women that come from poverty, and they don't have a way of supporting themselves." But I've seen this happen among very educated women. I've seen this happen among women who have amazing careers, business owners who go through that as well. And that's why I share this, because I think that it is so important to work on realizing that you do have value, do matter, and you have so much value that it doesn't matter where you come from. And not only women, but men. I've seen men be in relationships that are very abusive. In fact, one of my very good friends, and I won't share the name because I don't have permission to share this personal story, but is one of the top speakers in the world. And he mentioned to me that one of his ex-wives used to hit him with a frying pan, and he was in this domestic violence situation, was able to get out of it. And I know it happens among it doesn't matter, who you are, what your background is, or what country. I've seen it everywhere. So that's why I share that, because I realized, what my part was in it. And I could have easily avoided it had I recognized all of the signs, and I would have had to have gone through all of that.
Well, and you talk about, and you take onus on yourself, and I understand why you do, but you go from, a doctor helping you get out of one domestic situation, and to add to that, one person can make a difference, listeners, people watching. That doctor made a
Absolutely.
difference in your life. Don't ever think you can't make a difference in other people's lives if you know they're going through domestic violence. To a family member who should have kept their opinion to themselves, right? And that's why I constantly teach and educate people about associations. Just because you're related to somebody or it's a friend, yeah, and they always, oh, I'm just giving you, they give you unsolicited advice because you never asked this person their advice, so it's unsolicited. They give you advice and you feel guilt, and that guilt and trauma from your past made you make a decision that caused you to get to a circumstance where you had to leave this person. And you are right, men do go through domestic violence. I left my ex, this has been a long time ago. I used to get things thrown at me. I used to get threatened all the time. I used to get hit. So I get it. I understand. And it took me a long time. And that's already been 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, that I left her and got divorced. It took me a long time to feel worthy. And I kept on attracting people in my life, not just relationships, romantic relationships, friends, people that would always make me feel like I was less than I actually am. They'd make me feel like my self-worth was in the toilet. I had no self-esteem, and it stemmed all the way from my origin growing up and being married to somebody like that. I attracted it because I didn't know any different. I thought that was the way things should be because I had seen it in my life. It was a pattern. And I moved forward to where I am now. And I think about your circumstances. It always ties back to who you're associating with, who you listening to, right? And if
Right.
we listen to the same people over and over again, tell us that we can talk things into existence and all the other garbage that we hear, or, I appreciate the fact that the person said, well, God brings people to you, because I do believe that when we pray, right, that God brings us people that can help us out. But for somebody to say that God brought somebody to you that you're not feeling good, your internal compass is going off, is going off tilt,
Mhm.
you know, their opinion was not worth it. And I coach people all the time on how to avoid and change your associations and circumstances, because every time I deal with my clients on a life coaching business part of my business into the finance part of their business, it's always patterns or people in their lives that are manipulating them and causing them to stay stuck and on that hamster wheel. So I'm glad you got out of that and that you're continuing to work on yourself, because I'm working on myself to the day I take my last breath. And obviously you are as well. I appreciate you sharing that, though. It's tough. I can see it. I could see it when you talked about it in Mexico too. And when you and I were, some of the stuff you had told me, like this last stuff that you talked about, you didn't necessarily talk about on stage. I knew about it because you and I talked when we were sitting by the hot tub, right? If you
Mhm.
recall
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And I do appreciate it. I appreciate your vulnerability, because so many people that are going to listen or watch this need to understand there is a way out. And that way out is to start talking and associating with people that aren't always going to say, oh, you should be satisfied where you're at. Or that man is perfect for you. Or that woman's perfect for you. I used to hear that, Marie. It drove me crazy. You
Yeah.
need a woman to help you raise those 5 kids. And so I get into a relationship and I'd put up and tolerate with way too much garbage, or my kids would get verbally abused, not necessarily physically, but verbally and mentally abused. And they felt like they were, on the back burner or second fiddle or whatever, to a point where I finally said one day, I woke up and said, I'm not going to date. And I didn't date for 15 years. I,
Wow. I'm
I
so
just, I just
proud of
raised,
you.
raised, raised my
Yeah.
kids.
I think we need more of that. And I understand, I get it. It's hard to be single, but once you have
Very
kids,
hard.
there's a responsibility and you've got to take care of those kids. And that's why my son, like you met my son, because
Oh
he
yeah.
travels with me everywhere. And when Dr. Rome called me, he says, I need you to come facilitate. And I said, well, Lindy has to come with me. And he's like, okay. So people already know that my son travels with me. But I think that is so necessary because you just don't know, and it's not worth that risk to put your kids through that, because you don't know until you're in that relationship, and then it's too late if they hurt your kids.
Oh
So
yeah. Absolutely.
it makes me so happy that you decided, you know what, I'm gonna put myself in the back burner. I'm gonna take care of my kids.
Yeah, it was, I appreciate you saying that. It was tough. There was many nights of loneliness and, feeling helpless. And I started leading a really sheltered life. And because I was so afraid, and my self-worth and self-esteem was so low because I was starting to work on myself, but I had a long process that I distrusted what people would say to me, because I always wondered what was the catch, what they were saying. Were they manipulating me? Were they trying to, what did they want from me? So I started living a very secluded life. And it was interesting when I finally started dating again after 15 years. But bottom line, I got through it. You and I are continuing to push forward. My kids are all adults. I always joke about the fact none of them are in jail, so I must have done something right. None of them have gotten into trouble with the law that I'm aware of. And kids, if you're listening, don't tell me. Just keep it to yourself. So, Marie, you raised 4 children as a single mother, and I can relate to this myself. As I just mentioned, being a single dad of now 5 adult kids, and I have 4 grandbabies, another one on the way. I'm excited. I know when this happened, it was a struggle to continue to climb and move forward in the business world. I had to sacrifice and put my dreams on a shelf temporarily. What was the experience like for you trying to raise kids alone while striving to make it in the business world?
So at that time for me, I was thinking, no one's ever going to touch my kids again. And I'm going to do everything I can to take care of my children. So at the time that I found out that, my second husband had beat my kids in unimaginable ways, I was working for a major financial services company, managing a $600 million marketing budget. So I left that secure job, secure pay, left home, car, everything. So it's just my kids and I. And we didn't have anything anymore, but I had them and they were safe. And so that's all I kept thinking is my kids are safe now. They're safe. So I had to find a way to earn an income to support ourselves and get ourselves a place to live, a vehicle, all of those things. And one of the best ways that I thought of was sales, because I thought, well, I could work commission and make and pay my own way, because my kids had a lot of healthcare costs. So my oldest son had an autoimmune disease, and I had to take him to physical therapy several times a week. I had to have a bunch of tests done monthly to make sure his organs didn't shut down, and it was very costly. And then PTSD counseling for post-traumatic stress for the children of the abuse that they had gone through. And nobody wanted to give me an opportunity because they said I didn't have experience in sales. And I said, if I can sell a board of directors how to spend $600 million, I can definitely sell your little $30,000, $150,000 product. And they looked at me thinking I'm nuts. But they didn't understand, my passion and my background. And so I had this big desire to help other people. And one of the companies, I said, look, if you give me an opportunity and I pass all of the tests and the training, will you give me an opportunity? And they laughed at me and they're like, yeah, right. Okay, you can come up for training. And I passed everything. And they said, some of you did very well, but this is a man's world and you're just not going to make it in this industry. So I, normally don't pay attention to those kinds of things, but I'm looking around the room and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the only woman in this room. And so I knew they were talking to me. And so when I mentioned it to the president, he says, yeah, I was talking to you. You're not going to sell anything except candy. So why don't you just go back home? And I said, look, why don't you give me a contract? 30 days, you have nothing to lose. You don't pay me anything. If I sell something, you just pay me my commission. But if I meet my quota, not only do you pay me, I'm now part of your sales team. And he just laughed and thought it was not going to be possible, because he said that in order for you to make it in sales with the type of medical equipment and capital equipment that we're selling into doctors' offices, you'd have to take the doctors out to the strip club. You have to take them hunting. You have to take them fishing. And he's like, you're not willing to do that. And I don't think any doctor's going to want to go with you to hunting and fishing. So I said, I don't have to do those things. And I didn't. And so this device for diagnosing balance disorders, vestibular disorders, central nervous system disorders, such as traumatic brain injuries, concussions. I was passionate about that because of my mom. And I thought, if I can get this into doctors' offices and they're going to help patients, then that's going to be another person that's going to be saved. And they don't have to go to through the pharmacological treatment that my mom went through. And that's all I could think of. And so I went out there and I became the top sales representative in the company. They didn't know why. And they didn't understand my background. They didn't understand my passion. And then I was finally able to get myself and my kids to a stable position where, we did not lack for anything. We're doing very well. So then I get a call from one of the vice presidents of the company. And I never met him in person. So I was excited. So I thought, man, this is great. They're probably going to offer me like a partnership or ownership in the company. So I was just thinking all these positive thoughts, that I mentioned earlier. And I had just closed 2 big accounts at Baylor University and University of Texas. So I thought, wow, this is exciting. So we go out to dinner and he's telling me what a great job I've done. And so I'm really excited because I'm expecting something huge. And he slips a piece of paper across the table and I open it and I was completely deflated, because what he was offering me was a salary of like $150,000 a year, which sounds good, but I was making commissions of $100,000 to $150,000 every month. And I was like, this is what I'm making on a, monthly basis. What they didn't understand is I have a nanny. I'm traveling with 4 kids. So when you're flying across the US with your 4 kids and a nanny, the company's not paying for that. I'm paying for it. And I have all these medical expenses and my son's medical expenses. They didn't see that. So on $150,000 a year, I'd go bankrupt because there's no way I could afford to travel with my kids. I would be stuck in one region and I couldn't make the level of sales I was at. So I would probably disappoint them. And also, who's going to take care of my kids? I can't afford a nanny anymore. I can't afford their healthcare bills with that income. So I said, I'll just stay with the arrangements we have now. And he says, you don't understand. You can't, because this is your only option. You either accept this or you never work for us again. In fact, you can't even attend the trainings for the sales that you just made. So that's your only option. And I knew I couldn't survive on that with, working and you just on $150,000 a year, you can't travel with 4 kids all over and pay for their flights and pay for a nanny and all the medical bills that I had. So I had to, I was basically let go. I was told, don't even show up. Don't even show up to the trainings or the sales you did. And that really hurt because I worked hard for those. I worked so hard for that, and not even to show up for that, and not even get paid for those. So I lost a lot. And it hurt. I just remembered my grandfather's words, vengeance belongs to the Lord. It doesn't belong to you. And that means forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have no pain. It doesn't mean you have no hurt. It doesn't mean that it'll be erased from your memory. But I went to another person who helped me, Dr. Martin, and he was a client of mine, and we had become very good friends, and we're still dear, dear friends. And I was crying, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he says, this is the best day of your life. And I'm like, you're nuts. What do you mean it's the best day of your life? How am I going to take care of all these? So I'm laying out all my expenses. And he says, no, you start your own company. And so sometimes you have to borrow somebody else's confidence in you that you don't even have in yourself.
That is so true, though. Again, back to what we talked about earlier, it can take one person to make a difference in our lives. The doctor that reported your abuse to this doctor, a different doctor now telling you, best day of your life, start your own company. It's because we were so attuned and trained in patterns from youth all the way through adulthood, from not just our families, from society, that people are so negative. They automatically, so our trained thoughts become negative when bad things happen to us. The first thing we do is go to a place of, oh my goodness, what's going on with my life? Everything's, boo hoo, woo hoo, or doom and gloom. And I've been there myself. So, you ended up doing that. You started your own company. And then 2 years later, you got to a point. One of the things that I admire so much about you is that you went and you ended up buying that company, and you didn't fire the people that caused that grief for you. Because sadly, in corporate world, not just the US and Canada, it is so male dominated and it is so male controlled, and they put a stigma on women. And some of the most powerful people in business that I know are women, not men. Men, tend to try to keep women down. And that's what that gentleman was doing. I'm surprised you didn't fire every single person in that company when you bought them out. How was that journey when you did buy them out, though? What were the conversations like in regards to, did they kiss ass? Were they afraid you're gonna get rid of them? Like, what happened after that, you buying the company that got rid of you?
Well, I never thought about buying the company. It was never, never even came across in my mind. But I was doing so well in the company that I had created that some of the owners contacted me and they said, do you want to invest in our company? So I went back and I evaluated the books, and I saw that I had done the majority of the sales. So when I bought the company and we were signing, it took like 6 months of negotiations, and we're signing the paperwork. And Dr. Scarpino, he says, well, no one will ever disrespect you now. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, you just bought the company that fired you. And I just kind of laughed and didn't think much about it. But what I realized is when I bought the company, I used to have a conflict with the engineering team, because it's an FDA cleared device, and it's there's a lot of regulatory requirements. So when I would, being in sales, you always want to provide your client with the best service, with the best product. So I thought, oh, maybe we can improve on this. Can you make this change? And it'll be, I thought, something small in the software. I didn't realize, because they had never communicated with me, that that would entail over 35, well, now it's more like $45,000 worth of paperwork and a 6-month process. So it's all regulatory. I mean, it's something that can be done probably real soon, maybe in a month or less, right? Maybe even in a day, or just a quick software change. But it's the regulatory that takes a long time. So they didn't really like me, and I didn't like them. But I realized that the whole company was compartmentalized. And so when I go do trainings at corporations, these are some of the things that I teach, because sales didn't know what engineering was doing, accounting didn't know what nobody knew what anybody else was doing. And this is what I realized: these were the top doctors in the world. I mean, this is American Institute of Balance. They actually did all of the research and development for our technology. And the founder of the president of AIB is actually a research scientist for the American Academy of Neurology, sits on the board of CMS. I mean, these guys are brilliant. And I have Dr. Scarpino, who's professor emeritus at University of Dayton, who's one of the top engineers in the country. So these guys knew what they were doing, and they were good at their field. So why would I get rid of them? Because we all had the same vision, provide the best product, the best service for these doctors so that they can provide better patient care. And so would it make sense to let go of them because they didn't understand sales and I didn't understand their roles? And once I understood their roles, now we began to collaborate. And now we have excellent communication with the entire team, and everybody collaborates with each other. Everybody knows what, everybody knows their roles and they stay within their roles. So that's pretty much what I did. And so I did operate from an area of, oh, this happened to me. And I tried to understand why. And they didn't understand. They thought, hey, we're like the best scientists, we're the best engineers, we're the best doctors. You don't have our qualifications, which clearly I didn't. So they thought the reason I was selling so well was because it's a great product, which it is a great product, but it's not that easy. There is a skill set to sales. And so once they understood that, then they got it, and it all clicked.
Well, the skill set to sales, when their communication with you is you got to be able to take them to strip clubs, hunting and fishing, like that is such a broken mentality set. For one thing, as a male, that's offensive to think that I have to have that in my life in order to take anybody serious, whether it's, a female or a male. And it still happens in my industry. I've had people tell me, because I've done, excuse me, things in my country that still hold true as being the best, right? And
Mm-hmm.
bottom line, I had people telling me, you'll never be able to do that unless you do specific, XYZ patterns. And I'd tell them, well, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'd be thinking it. I wouldn't necessarily say it to them. I just go and do it. And then you'd have people tripping over their words going, oh, we can't believe you were able to accomplish that. And, having that kind mindset that I have, and my Christian background, and wanting to always be welcoming and forgiving, made it so that I didn't have that revenge heart either. And that's what I hear from you. You didn't have that revenge mindset or that heart, and you could have laid waste. But meanwhile, you thought about, like you just said, look what these doctors know. Look what they've done. They just didn't understand. And you gave them another shot, another chance. And the world's blessed by that. They're blessed by the fact of your personality, your tenacity to want to understand the human condition. And that's exactly what I hear from you. You understood the human condition, that these doctors just didn't get it. You understood that these different departments didn't communicate with one another, and you facilitated them all functioning as one heart, as one mind and body and soul, to go out and change the industry and the world. And you know what? We're blessed. The industry's blessed, because I imagine those machines you talk about are in my country as well.
Yes. Mhm. Absolutely. London Health Sciences, I believe, or I apologize because I did
That's
not make
okay.
that sale. That's one of
That's
our
okay.
distributors. But there's several hospitals in Canada that have our devices. And I do see that when I get asked to go speak to corporations, I do see that there's still a lot of compartmentalization going on between the different departments. And they don't really understand the power of collaboration, because once you're able to collaborate and work as teams, everything changes. It's just amazing.
Is it gender focused though? Is it because it's such a male dominated world where the men are like, pushing their chest out? Or is it just because they've never learned throughout their lives how to communicate as a group and work in that synergy?
Well, I still, of course, there are going to be those people that are, that have that macho mentality, or male, women belong in the home. I don't really see that as much, but of course it's going to exist. But I'm also certified as a human behavioral consultant. And a lot of it has to do with personality. We don't recognize different personality traits in each other. And when you don't understand that, it's hard to communicate. I'll give you an example. Doctors tend to be very calculating. They like to analyze everything. They're very numbers driven. They want to see the data, very scientific, which is great. But they're not as sensitive because, hey, we need to see this data. We need, and that's good. That's what you want, right? You, when you go and have the surgery done, you want to make sure that the doctor is educated and he's going to provide the best procedure for you, right? But that may come across as not sensitive, not caring, and to someone who is more sensitive and doesn't really pay attention to numbers and data. And so it's really learning how, it's a communication issue. And that is one of the things that I help facilitate as well, is understanding different personality styles, because we're all born with a different personality.
Of course.
You know, some people are very outgoing, some people are more reserved. You know, they tend, I tend to sit back actually when we're having dinner or something and it's a group that I don't know. I tend to sit back and listen and observe. And some people may take that as she's shy, she's quiet, you know. And I get that a lot when I go speak. I remember I was in London and I spoke to 5,000 women. And I remember before going up there, people were, oh no, you're going to be okay. But then once I get up there and I get a standing ovation, they're like, oh, can you come speak here? Can you come speak there? Because I'm more unassuming. But people miscalculate because of my personality style. And so I see that that is really the biggest issue, because once we get pushed, we're able to push through those different personality traits and learn how to communicate with each other. Everything changes. I remember doing a training for Providence Hospitals in Houston, Texas, and it was a group of about 500 doctors. And we were talking about, you know, personality styles and understanding your personality style and how to communicate with different, you know, different styles. And one of the nurses came up to me and she goes, you know, I always thought that my doc hated my guts. I hated coming to work every day because I thought he hated me. And she's very bubbly, big person. You know, she's like, hi, you know, very happy, go lucky. And the doctor's like, hey, we don't have time for parties. You know, we've got to focus. We've got to get into surgery. You got to be serious. Right. And so, not that he didn't like her, and she was offended. She's like, oh, he hates me. He doesn't like me. And because she, you know, she's like the life of the party, right? It's just different personality styles. And she says, but now I understand him and I understand why he doesn't hate me. And the doctors would say the same thing. You know, they thought, "Huh, this nurse, she's so aloof. She's like, she doesn't care. And I'm trying to give her the data and I'm trying to tell her like it's important. We got to do this. And she's just thinking life's a party. No, this is serious stuff, you know? So it's very interesting because once you understand each other, then you're able to work with each other because you understand, hey, this is, they're not trying to hurt me, or they don't dislike me. This is just how they operate.
Yeah, it's true. I like how you talk about, you know, the different personality types. I've read and researched so many personality you know, little hang-ups that we can have, or we automatically label people. Like you said, you sit back, and then people are going, are you going to be okay? And then you go out and slay it. Um she's now passed. She's a famous American author. Her name's Florence Littauer. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She wrote a book called Personality Plus, and it's very easy to read. And she literally talks and starts every chapter talking about, and it has pictures of babies in a crib. And literally, she says you can, by looking at their body language and how they respond as babies, and how you can literally know what they're going to be like in their younger years, and you can use specific ways to help nurture them into, you know, impressive adults. But one of the things I like, you talked about the fact that doctors, engineers, they're always analytical. In my experience of being in a serial entrepreneur for the last 30 plus years, I find that the more analytical, the more you know, statistic driven, and here's all our processes and procedures, they are some of the worst people to run business. They're great as the back end. The person that's great at running the business is a person that's bubbly, that is a good relationship builder. They know how to connect with others. They know how to make that, that synergy. They know how to be that person that is empathetic. They know how to be that person that's kind. They know when to be firm and not firm. They read body language. They listen to tonality. And they are the people that, sometimes they were B students in high school, or they were average students in college, university, and they're leading the charge of all those analytical and those people that are, everything has to be matter of fact. And again, that's not a bad thing. It's something I've noticed, that it's imperative that those that run companies are people that are good relationship builders.
Absolutely. Yep. You're
Right?
absolutely right.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is your best-selling book, your Greater Fortune, Essential Lessons from the Entrepreneur Who Bought the Company That Fired Her. I myself wrote a book and found it very cathartic. It was very healing for me and helped me, through some of the things that I had buried throughout my life up to where I am now. It was difficult because it forced me to uncompartmentalize stuff, rip off the Band-Aid. What was your journey like when you wrote your book? Like what was the experience like?
It was very similar, very similar. And I pretty much share a lot of my experiences in there and then what I learned from it. And it's kind of like a workbook built into it. So a lot of organizations are actually using it as part of their mastermind or part of their, they do a 6 weeks with it. So I just had a company order 300 books for all of their staff. So that's how they're using it, because it's more of a business book, but I also share some of the personal stories behind it. And I do share a little bit about my journey from the beginning. And the reason I do is because about being a product of rape. And the reason I do is because sometimes we take what's happened to us into the workplace. And I believe it's important to, to recognize that and to recognize, some of these personality traits that we have and some of these decisions that we make, where do they come from? And so that it can help us make better decisions, not only in our personal lives, but in the business world as well. So it encompasses not only my personal, but business, and a lot of business lessons from, starting a new company from scratch, getting FDA clearance without any venture capital, going out and buying the company that fired me, and what that looks like. And that was I bought the company in 2010, and we're still going, and we're the leader in the industry, in our industry.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's great though that people are understanding your book is a tool to help them elevate their staff, their people that are supporting them, the support structure of their company. I know myself, there's so many people out there that write books that really haven't attained anything. They just write a book, but it's not based on substance. It's not based on reality from origin to where they are today, which your book is. And as you mentioned, you had to do that so that people can connect to it. It's back to that know, like, and trust factor. So, I appreciate you sharing that. It is a journey to write a book. Do you have any other books in the future that you're going to write?
Yes, I do. I have one I'm working on now. So I'm excited about that. And I'll probably release that sometime next year.
You care to share what it's about? Is it a continuation of what you currently wrote, or is it something
Well,
completely
it's
different?
based on a lot of requests from so many people that read my book, and they said, I want you to write a biography. I want you to write more about you, because they want to know more of the details, how, and they're like, oh, what happened here and here? Because some things, they're just not appropriate to share in a business book. There's some things that are,
Yeah.
so I hope the title's not offensive to you, but the title of the book is called What's More Valuable Than Sex?
Oh, that doesn't offend me.
And then it says, and then the subtitle is You Are. And then it goes into, it's a pretty good book, and it's more like a biography, but it doesn't have the workbook. I just go more into the details, but I share a lot of life lessons within that book.
No, that's awesome. Like, yeah, no, that title doesn't offend me at all. It's no different than, labeling what am I going to call my podcast, or what am I going to put as a subject line on an email. It's a call to action. It's to make people think, to want to pick up that book, to purchase it so that they read it. So I think that's a very compelling title, actually. I really like that. Right.
Oh, thanks.
And anybody that would be offended by it, it's no different than my book. I've had people make fun of it because it's called Give a Heck. Number one, they don't even look to see the fact that's my legal last name. I'm not trying to be cute. I'm trying to be, shock them, like, give a heck, how to live life on purpose and not by accident. Well, what do you know about that? Blah, 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 blah. Well, how about you read the book? You'll understand, right? So I appreciate you sharing that. And let me know. I'll broadcast it out to my social media and my listeners, and let them know about the fact that you've released this book. I look forward to it. So, Marie, you teach others how to walk away without guilt from whatever might be holding them back and focusing on the future. What would be an actionable 1 or 2 things someone could start with right now to let go of their guilt?
Well, look at where you are right now. And, we always tend to think of the past, and it's hard to move forward. So it's simple exercise. Where are you right now? You okay? Are you fine? Now, of course, if you're in a domestic violence situation, you need to get help, call 911. If you're in danger, if you're suicidal, get some help. But where are you right now? And also, guilt serves as a purpose. The reason we have guilt is if we've done something wrong, it's supposed to gear us to shift our behavior, right? So that we don't do that again and repeat that mistake again. That's what guilt is for. And then once we recognize that, and for me, as what that looks like for me as a Christian is repent, turn away from sin, right? Ask God, please forgive me. I repent. I am truly sorrowful. And then turning away from it and not doing that action again. And then you should walk away from that guilt, because that guilt doesn't belong there, because you've already been forgiven. You can walk away from that. It does not serve you to continue to walk in guilt after you've turned away from sin. Now, for non-believers, having that guilt, I do believe that comes from God. But then at some point you need to recognize, hey, this is not, it was a mistake. It's in my past. This does not serve me well. This is who I am now, who I am today, who I am right now, and move forward. And one of the best ways to be able to do that is to start recognizing who you are and walking back to you, because every single one of us has unique skills, unique gifts that were given to you by God. And nobody else has those. And we so often, especially in the business world, we want to duplicate what somebody else has done. That gift that they have wasn't given to you. That's theirs. You have gifts and talents that were given to you. So get a sheet of paper, write down, what are 10 skill sets that you have, and how can you use those to benefit others? And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, a lot of times when we're trying to create this list, which again, we start to compare ourselves to somebody else. Well, I want to be a podcaster, and I want to have this, these many followers. But what gift was given to you? Does that align with that? Maybe that does. And if that does, great. But maybe communication is not your gift. And if communication is not your gift, what is your gift? And how does what you want to do, how does that align with your gifts? Does that make sense? So in other words, in other words, I didn't have the gift of communication, although I speak now, and people may be shocked at that, because being in sales, I had to learn that. So I got into sales out of necessity. So it may be that you're passionate about starting a podcast, but communication is not your gifting. So that's something that you can work on, because you can always work on something. So it's combining your passion and your skill sets and combining them together. Now, I've always had a passion about helping others, and I'm doing that through speaking, through workshops, and through doing trainings as well. So that's one way I'm using my gifting. And so it can be simple. I give in my book, there's an example, Cheesecake Factory. I mean, that got started someone baking cheesecake in their basement. That was a passion they had. They loved it. They were very good at it. And now look at cheesecake factories all over. They have them in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I So it can be something really simple. And it's just, how are you going to serve? And the next thing is, how are you going to serve with your gifting and with your passion? How are you going to serve and help others? Because once you start focusing on others, you're no longer focused on you. And a lot of times when we have this guilt, it's because we're so laser focused on us and ourselves that we lose focus of the big picture. We don't see the big picture because you're so focused on that. And it's so sad because, suicide has really gone up over, especially after the pandemic. And it makes me very sad because sometimes we get so laser focused on our problems and our guilt of what we could have done, should have done, didn't do, what we wish would happen, doesn't happen. And the only thing that we see is these problems because we're so laser focused on it, instead of looking at the opportunities in front of you and take, like I said, write down that list of what are your 10 skill sets that you have that you are good at. And you don't have to share that with anybody else. And then come look at what is your passion, and then look at how is this going to help me serve others. And
Yeah,
so
that's
mhm.
awesome. I love that. Keep on going. Sorry.
So yeah, I just want to share that because I think that that is so important. And I think that people don't realize the greatness that is within them. And for me as a Christian, I don't look at it as you're so great, you're so awesome. I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus Christ came and died on the cross for us, not because of how great I am, because of how great he is. And because he is so great, he gifted you with these things so that you can make the world a better place. So I think there's a slight shift there from, oh, I'm so great, I'm so awesome, I'm going to change the world, versus, wow, God's gifted me with this. I have a responsibility to use this to help make the world a better place. It's a tiny little shift where it's not really focused on your ego, but focused on others. Does that make sense?
100%. Like you talked about, guilt serves a purpose to shift behavior. And, when for myself, and again, listeners that aren't God fearing like myself and Marie, that's fine. Whatever works for you. I know for myself, the more I give it up to God, I know, like when I went through my trauma, in my marriage, to getting divorced, to becoming a single dad of 5 kids, and all the tumultuous things that would go on between my 6 inches, prayer was cathartic for me. It was something I needed to do. And within that prayer, I'd have gratitude and gratefulness to God for giving me an opportunity. Every morning I say it. This morning I did again. Thank you for giving me another shot. At night, thank you for making me have this day. Thank you for all these things that happened. And yes, there might have been some character building moments, but I thank God for still giving me another shot, right? Maybe,
Amen.
it's people don't get it. And it's been a savior for me. God has been my savior, Jesus, my whole life. And I completely agree with you. I give it up to God. I'll say to myself when things are really crushing down on me, and I'll say, Lord, what is your will for me? I'm giving this up to you. Guide me to, help me, bring the right people into my life. And then I've got to be cognizant enough to understand, oh, Marie's in my life. Thank you, God. Right. And have appreciation for you coming into my life. Right. It's a blessing. And again, for those that aren't, God fearing, you're atheist, agnostic, or whatever you are, I'm not here to pick on you. Do what works for you. If you need to communicate to the universe and it helps you, as long as you're moving forward and not letting guilt be your anchor in life.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Marie, your core message revolves around resilient leadership. Can you please share how vital resilience is to being a successful entrepreneur?
Well, yes. And I believe those three keys to being resilient are adaptability, being able to adapt in any situation. So, for example, I was just interviewed recently on a Fox News station, and we were talking about the flooding in St. Louis. And this, I mean, this just happened overnight. I mean, people didn't expect it. And I remember hearing this story of this little boy who immediately he used his intuition to go save his grandmother's life. Like, he ran from one house to the next house to go get her, and then her house flooded. And had he not done that, she wouldn't have survived. And I think about, how sometimes as adults, we don't follow our intuition. We don't listen to our intuition, and we wait on somebody else, waiting for somebody else to come and save me, waiting for somebody else to do the rescue. This little boy just went on intuition. He adapted to the situation. He took charge and saved his grandmother's life, which I think is pretty amazing. And we have to be able to be adaptable. We get so comfortable, and you and I go through the same circles of the comfort zone, and being able to get out of the comfort zone. But it's true, if you're not adaptable, your whole world will crash around you. And if you're not resilient, you're going to snap under pressure. And resiliency allows you, like a rubber band, to be able to snap back without snapping under that pressure, because you're able to adapt by using things like intuition, for example. Some of the other things that are important to resiliency is forgiveness, being able to forgive. So many times we hold on to these past hurts. And as a Christian and as a believer, I know that forgiveness is hard sometimes. If you get fired for no reason at all, like I was, or someone abuses your children. And for me, how I found the best way I found to do this is I gave it to God, and I said, God, I need help forgiving, because I was in a really bad place at that point in my life. Had he not lost parental rights to the one child we had together, I might be in prison right now, because I wanted to kill him. And, as a Christian, having hatred is just as bad as murder. So what difference, or how different am I from this person who abused my kids and me, a murderer? There's no difference. So what I did is I said, God, I'm having a hard time forgiving. Help me to forgive. Help me. Give me the resources that I need to be able to forgive. And I came to this realization that I needed to pray for this man, because if I prayed for this person and he changed his ways, that would be one less child that would get abused. Because if he continues in his ways and ends up in another relationship with somebody else's kids could be abused. So, I don't know what the outcome is, because there's a lifetime restraining order with him, even against him and the one child we had together. But I do pray that his life has changed so that nobody else continues to get hurt. And forgiveness doesn't mean you don't forget. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that the pain's not there. It means that you no longer wish any harm on that person.
Well,
And
it
for
doesn't
me,
become a mental anchor for a person. Forgiveness
right,
allows us to let go of that mental anchor that's holding us back. You're right. We still feel pain, and we still feel anguish. I have moments when I think of all the adversities I've gone through, but yeah, thank goodness for God and my ability to forgive others and forgive myself for getting caught up in it.
exactly. And I think forgiveness is another key for building resiliency. Forgiveness, as you had mentioned, that you don't have that anchoring you down. And for me, forgiveness was only possible through my relationship in Jesus Christ, and realizing that he died on the cross for my sins, and he died a death that he didn't deserve, so that we can have a life we didn't deserve in eternity. So for me, it was so much easier realizing that God gave me this gift, and I need to forgive as he forgave me. It wasn't easy. So I had to ask him. I said, I need you to, fill me with the Holy Spirit, take away this hatred, this anger that I have for this person, because I really wanted to kill this person. And God took that away from me. Now I understand, someone who doesn't believe in God, like, how can you possibly forgive someone who's done something so horrific. And, aside of God, I don't know any other way. But what I do know is that it was destroying me on the inside. And what I do know is that having unforgiveness will destroy you, and it will just tear you apart. And I know it's a difficult thing, but I think that's one of the keys to resiliency. And I know that I couldn't have done it alone. I strongly believe that it was through the help of, um, my faith and my Christian faith
Oh,
that helped
absolutely.
it.
Without, it's the same as me. I would have never been able to, I used to lay in bed at night initially when I was married, then went going through divorce, and then being the single parent of 5 kids. Um, Prayer was so important to me, giving it up to God. And again, for those that aren't God fearing, that's fine. Do whatever works for you. But for Marie and myself, Jesus was the reason that we continued to persevere and move forward and not let the circumstances that had brought us down control us for the rest of our lives. It helped myself and helps Marie elevate and continue to climb in life, and do whatever works for you. But I appreciate how you brought in the fact that it is, it's vital to resiliency to be able to have forgiveness. First off, you talked about being able to adapt, and then forgiveness. You said there was one other point, though. What was the third?
So there's many more, but I'm going to give you three. One is
Okay.
being adaptable, being able to adapt.
Uh,
Forgiveness is the other one that we
uh,
talked about, and the other one is being able to look at the big picture, being able to look. We talked about earlier how we tend to focus on the problem instead of focusing on the opportunity or the possibilities. So for me, I wasn't able to see it by myself when I got fired. I was not able to see the possibilities. So Dr. Martin was there for me to see them for me. And he's like, look, there's this whole world out there. You can start another company. And I never even thought of that. I never thought, I'm going to start a company one day. I'm going to be CEO. I didn't think that. And so when he showed me, look, this is a possibility for you, I was so stuck. And, I had this tunnel vision. I've been fired. What am I going to do? And I was so focused on the problem that I didn't see the possibilities, which he saw. And so, he didn't give me money. He didn't give me a loan. He didn't give me anything at all. But he gave me that, faith, the ability to see outside of this problem that I was looking at. And so I believe that another key is being able to see the opportunities. I believe that adversity, when we have adversity, that's usually when the largest opportunities show up. But when we have adversity, instead of looking at the opportunities, we tend to focus on that adversity. And that's why people hate, you know, challenges, problems, having adversity. And we do everything we can to try to avoid adversity. But I don't believe that you can avoid it. I believe that um, things happen, acts of God, with, flooding and the shooting of Uvalde, all of these things, they don't only impact us. I mean, those communities, they impact the whole nation. They impact entire communities sometimes. And if we're not able to adapt, and we're not able to forgive, and we're not able to look at opportunities outside of these circumstances that are beyond our control, we're not going to be able to become resilient. And so that I believe that resiliency is one of the keys to leadership, is when you're able to adapt and you're able to forgive and you're able to see the opportunities in the situation that you're going through, whether good or bad.
Yeah, it's so true though. And one of the things you mentioned is that Dr. Martin believed in you. And
Mhm.
sometimes in life, I know myself, that's the only thing I could hang on to is I have a mentor over 30 years that he has always believed in me based on where I've gone through and been in my life. And even though I didn't have belief in myself, his belief in me was something I could hang on to, that I could use as a I guess a life raft or a rope to pull myself forward. So those listening or watching, don't discount the fact of somebody else's belief in you, especially if there's somebody that you know, like, and trust, and you know that they're genuine with their words and their actions. Some people are just outright phony. Hopefully you have people in your life that are like Dr. Martin was to you, Marie,
Mhm.
give you that belief in yourself and made you think differently. Whether or not he give you anything tangible in regards to money or support that way, he gave you one of the greatest gifts. He gave you the gift of belief, which God send them to you, in my opinion. But that's
Yep,
just
I believe
right.
that too.
So I
Yes.
appreciate you sharing that. So, Marie, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Well, always remember that you matter and that you have value and you have a purpose in life. There is a purpose for you, and you may be doing great and wonderful where you are now, but I challenge you to think bigger. Where, who else can you serve? What else can you do to make the world a better place? And if you're at a point where you feel you have nothing to offer, you do. You do have something to offer, and there is a purpose for you in this world, and you do matter.
No, that's awesome. It's true though. We all add value. I know myself, I was floundering, beginning of the pandemic, and I had already knew who Tony was, and as you know who Tony is, he was a big catalyst in having belief in me that took me toward and connected me to other people to have this podcast, to write my book, because I knew that I had all this in me that I wanted to share, but I didn't know how to serve it up properly outside of my realm of, the finance coaching I'd already been doing for the last 20 years. So, it's so imperative that we realize we are valuable. And again, back to that association, the connections made it so that I understood how powerful podcasting could be. That I wasn't looking at podcasting as a monetary thing. I looked at it as, how can I serve others? How can I bring fantastic individuals like Marie to more people? How can your story, your vulnerability, your successes touch other people's lives? Well, a podcast is a perfect forum for that. My book is a forum for people to know, like, and trust me, so that all aspects of what I've been doing is to serve and connect with others, because God, I'm a servant of God. God, I always talk about this story, and you've heard it many times too. To summarize, somebody's on top, is going to drown, and climbs on top of a building. God sends a boat, God sends a helicopter, does all these things, and goes to the pearly gates and says, why did you not save me? Well, how many more things did you want me to send you to save you? Right. And
Right.
it's the truth, right? So uh, God sent people to me like Tony, and now you're another person that is in my life, and I'm blessed and highly favored for that. And you've given me something. You've given me a gift of being able to share this with my listeners and make a difference in their lives. And I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be part of your life, and I'm so glad to know you and call you my friend.
Yes, and I look forward to hopefully our paths cross again at some event, or maybe even outside of an event where we just meet up and hang out, because I think you're a fantastic individual. And God bless you.
Oh, God bless you too. Thank you so much.
So our time is almost up, and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way to reach you?
So you can find me at Resilient Expert on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. On LinkedIn, I'm under Marie Cosgrove, and my website is mariecosgrove.com.
Awesome. I'll make sure that all of that goes into the show notes. Those that are new to the show, you can find that at giveaheck.com. Hit the podcast portal. You will see Marie's smiling face, and below that will be the abbreviated show notes with all the links and connections for her social and her website, so that you can, continue the journey of what you've started right now. And it's never too late to give a heck. It's never too late to push forward in your life and, stop being camped in your mindset. And that all starts in associations. And Marie could be that great association for you to help you out. And of course, you can always reach out to myself. So I appreciate your time, Marie, for coming on. and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn. It is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.